2015 hours, June 12, 2026. The Gulf of Oman sits 15 naval miles off the Iranian port of Sirik, and the bridge crew of a 150,000-ton commercial oil tanker watches radar contacts close fast from Iranian territorial waters. Every prior encounter between commercial shipping and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy follows a recognizable sequence where fast attack craft approach, radio demands transmit, and boarding teams board. This was standard enforcement theater. The crew runs through that expectation in the seconds before the range collapses, but what they observe next breaks from every established pattern in the IRGC Navy's operating history. Iranian naval units open direct fire on the transiting vessel. This is not a warning round across the bow. Iranian forces execute hard kinetic action to enforce Tehran's newly declared transit blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, the 21 nautical mile corridor through which roughly 20 million barrels of petroleum move every single day. The gap between what the crew anticipates and what actually happens is total. Declassified tactical coordination data, later confirmed by US defense officials to RFE/RL, reveals that US Navy assets are already tracking the situation before the first shot breaks radio silence. Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers operating in the Gulf of Oman area have the threat picture bracketed. The response that follows is measured, layered, and rapid, and it produces a decisive tactical outcome within 40 minutes of the initial engagement off Sirik. The Sirik incident does not begin on June 12th. Its operational routes trace back exactly 24 hours. On June 11, 2026, Iran's Armed Forces Joint Command issues a formal declaration of a total transit ban through the Strait of Hormuz, targeting all commercial shipping and oil tankers operating without explicit Iranian authorization. This declaration marks a shift well beyond anything Tehran has attempted since the tanker war of the 1980s. Previous IRGC operations targeted individual vessels. This order closes the entire waterway as a matter of declared state policy, and it generates an immediate response from US naval commanders already positioned in the region. The operational logic behind that declaration connects to just over 2 months of active regional conflict. Washington and Tehran are deep in settlement negotiations, with Trump administration officials publicly confirming that a peace framework is at an advanced stage. Iran's military command does not wait for that agreement to close. Instead, it moves to tighten its grip on the one geographic asset that concentrates maximum strategic leverage before any deal gets signed. Holding the strait entrance near Sirik becomes the military expression of Tehran's negotiating posture, and the June 12th tanker engagement becomes its first public demonstration. At 02:15 hours on June 12th, a commercial tanker bound through the Strait of Hormuz attempts transit through the international shipping lanes without Iranian clearance under the newly imposed ban. Iranian one-way attack drones converge on the vessel at attack speed. The IRGC fires. According to RFE/RL reporting sourced to US defense officials, Iranian one-way attack drones are also directed against commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz lanes during the same window, producing an aerial threat against shipping in the international corridor. The tanker, its cargo, and the passage itself become simultaneous targets within a single coordinated sequence. US Navy destroyers in the area do not absorb the first wave and recalibrate. Fire control solutions generate through the Aegis Combat System before the IRGC can press a second attack. US forces detect and neutralize 2 Iranian one-way attack drones targeting commercial vessels in the lanes, with both intercepts executed in quick succession. Each intercept closes an attack corridor that Iran's naval arm had counted on using to sustain pressure on transiting shipping throughout the day, and the speed of the response forces the IRGC surface units to break contact rather than escalate. The Aegis Combat System is the architecture that produces that response speed. At its center sits the AN-SPY-1 phased array radar, a system that tracks more than 100 targets simultaneously while guiding multiple rounds in flight at the same time. Against low-altitude, low-radar cross-section one-way attack drones, the AN-SPY-1 feeds continuous track data to the Aegis fire control computer, which computes a precise intercept geometry. The destroyer then deploys either the RIM-162 Evolved SeaSparrow Missile, the ESSM, or the Phalanx Close-In Weapon System, CIWS, depending on range and time to impact. The ESSM carries an engagement range of approximately 50 kilometers and travels at supersonic speed. The Phalanx CIWS delivers 20mm rounds at 4,500 per minute as a terminal barrier. Both systems operate in a layered architecture, so any drone that survives the ESSM engagement envelope enters the CIWS envelope within seconds. The engineering paradox inside that defensive architecture creates a logistical bottleneck that USNI news analysts have documented across multiple recent Persian Gulf deployments. A single Iranian one-way attack drone carries an estimated production cost between $20,000 and $50,000. The RIM-162 ESSM interceptor that neutralizes it costs approximately $1.8 million per round. Against a 20-drone attack wave, the intercept expenditure reaches $36 million, against a total threat package costing roughly $1 million to assemble and launch. Each Arleigh Burke-class destroyer carries between 90 and 96 vertical launch system cells across all mission types, and sustained attrition operations drain those cells faster than conventional wartime planning assumes. That ratio forces tactical commanders to treat the VLS magazine as a finite resource and prioritize electronic warfare jamming and directed energy weapons to handle drone swarms before they reach the ESSM engagement boundary. The Strait of Hormuz creates the strategic mess behind every tactical decision made during the Sirik response. At its narrowest shore-to-shore width, the strait measures 21 nautical miles across. Approximately 20% of the global petroleum supply moves through this corridor, and a sustained blockade lasting 30 days removes an estimated 600 million barrels of crude from world markets over that period. No alternative maritime route exists to exit the Persian Gulf and bypass this choke point, meaning any bypass requires relying on land-based pipelines with limited capacity, which translates directly into fuel costs, charter rates, and delivery timelines for every refinery and industrial consumer dependent on Gulf crude. The physical geography gives whoever controls the passage a compression point on global energy pricing that no diplomatic instrument easily replicates. Washington's response extends well past drone intercepts. The US Navy enforces its own unilateral maritime blockade of Iranian ports, establishing a tactical stalemate in which any unsanctioned vessel movement triggers an immediate escalatory response from either side. CENTCOM operational updates from June 12th confirm that US naval forces maintain active enforcement posture across the entry and exit corridors of the Gulf of Oman throughout the day. FA-18 Super Hornets from carrier air wings, operating in the region, contribute a third enforcement layer, employing 20mm cannon rounds from their M61 Vulcan rotary cannon to strike the rudder systems of non-compliant vessels at the waterline. A precision strike on a rudder assembly disables steering without breaching the hull below the cargo line, which means the vessel loses maneuverability but retains structural integrity and does not discharge its petroleum cargo into the waterway. That tactic solves one of the core dilemmas of blockade enforcement, which is stopping a non-compliant ship without triggering an environmental catastrophe across one of the world's most strategically sensitive corridors. The geopolitical architecture surrounding the Sirik engagement runs through the active settlement negotiations between Washington and Tehran, aimed at ending the broader regional conflict. Trump administration officials confirmed to multiple outlets that the framework targeting an end to the 3-month regional conflict covers 2 central Iranian demands. These are the removal of enriched nuclear material from Iranian territory under international supervision, which is a key US and Israeli demand resisted by Tehran, and the lifting of economic blockades that have compressed Iranian oil export revenues to a fraction of pre-conflict levels. Iran's military command treats the strait closure as tangible proof that Tehran retains hard physical leverage in those talks, because no settlement framework carries durable strategic value if Iran can reclose the corridor the moment diplomatic pressure eases after an agreement is signed. That leverage calculation creates a visible tension within the Iranian command structure itself. Iran's Armed Forces Joint Command declares the blockade and executes the June 11th engagement, but the diplomatic track running in parallel through Iranian foreign ministry channels signals a different approach. OSINT researchers tracking Iranian state media on June 12 identify competing signals from the military and diplomatic branches of the Iranian government simultaneously, with the military track hardening its enforcement posture, while the foreign ministry track continues to signal negotiating flexibility. The Sirik engagement locks the military track into an active escalation posture at precisely the moment the diplomatic track requires restraint, and that internal contradiction compounds the complexity of any resolution timeline. Three distinct tactical lessons surface from the recent maritime engagements near Sirik for modern navies operating in contested chokepoint environments. The first addresses blockade enforcement mechanics. US forces demonstrate through the Super Hornet rudder strike method that precise, limited kinetic action against a vessel's steering system achieves compliance without destruction, preserving both the cargo and the environmental condition of the operating waterway. That delivery precision requires sensor fusion between airborne radar, electro-optical targeting pods, and data link coordination with surface fleet controllers working in a compressed tactical space where civilian and military contacts overlap constantly. The second lesson targets the asymmetric defense saturation problem that the $50,000 drone versus $1.8 million interceptor ratio creates. Analysis from USNI News points toward directed energy systems as the cost-effective path forward for close-range drone defense. The optical dazzling interdictor, Navy variant, designated Odin, and the high-energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance system, designated Helios, carry per-engagement costs measured in dollars of electrical power rather than millions in interceptor rounds. Forward deploying these systems to surface combatants operating in chokepoint environments reduces the VLS cell drain during sustained swarm engagements and extends the effective magazine depth of the destroyer below the waterline. The third lesson concerns physical presence as the primary deterrence instrument. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers operating at 9,500 tons full displacement, equipped with the Aegis system, standard missiles, and organic helicopter assets, produce a deterrence effect that no shore-based platform replicates at operational range. The physical arrival of a Burke-class hull in the Strait corridor forces any adversarial surface force to calculate engagement costs against a platform carrying over 90 VLS cells, a 5-inch deck gun, and active electronic warfare suites simultaneously. IRGC fast attack craft, generally displacing under 250 tons, carry no equivalent response to that combined weapons load, which is why the June 12th engagement produces 2 neutralized drones rather than a sustained multi-hour attack sequence against commercial shipping. The tactical picture from June 12, 2026 carries a clear set of implications. The Sirik incident marks a key enforcement action against a commercial vessel under Iran's declared transit ban, and the US Navy's response focuses primarily on Aegis intercepts. The cost asymmetry between defensive interceptors and attack drones remains an unresolved engineering bottleneck that directed energy development programs address, but have not yet closed for deployed forces. 20% of the world's daily petroleum supply moves through a 21 nautical mile passage. One state claims the authority to close it, and one navy demonstrates the capability to keep it open. The resolution of that contest, unfolding in real time across the Gulf of Oman, carries direct energy price consequences for every economy operating on petroleum-based supply chains. Whether the Trump administration's settlement framework closes before Iran's military command concludes that further strait escalation serves its negotiating position better than restraint, determines the trajectory of every ship movement through that corridor from this point forward. The Sirik engagement is the opening tactical exchange in that resolution process, and every intercept, every strike, and every diplomatic signal that follows builds directly on what happened in those 40 minutes off the Iranian coast.